stride ahead. Left side, Farrell at the red line. Blue line, waits for reinforcements. Just onside by a hair. Farrell, he's in the left circle. Sauce it across, score! The big dog, Owen Power. The way that he works, and he just waits into the left circle. Will actually backpedal and go across to Power, who is in tight. Sabine thumped by Hewart. A 1-0 Green Bay lead. In front, looking for a pass, and it's off a couple of buys. John Spetz lurking, and now Sam Oskevich the other way. A burst of speed. Puts on the brakes right in front of the left circle. Drop play. Here's Owen Power. He's got to look. He's in. He scores! Owen Power! It's Colton Ewart on the back pedal. Offensive zone, the drop. It's Power. Wrister score. The big dog. Owen Power makes it 6-3. 10:55 to go in this one. Steele not done yet. Plenty of time to go. A lot of climbing to do. Owen Power will put a dent in the deficit. Well, great work, Colton Ewart. Good puck possession on a drop feed, and there's Power with the wrister. Up top, Owen Power waits, carves in, a wrister, he scores! The big dog rips it by McCarthy. Rebound, and decent foul stick lifted to the last second by Pavel. 4-4 score, minute 12 still power play time. Farrell, left point. Did he say foul? Fontaine pulls up, shot is blocked. Behind the net, Matthew, did he say foul? One-timer, Power scores! The big dog makes it 5-4 Steele.
Welcome to Buffalo, Owen Power. What's happening, everybody? I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for joining me on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Greatly appreciate all of the Buffalo Bills, Buffalo Sabres fans that have reached out to me over the last few weeks to say, hey, when are you doing your show on Owen Power? I want to see it. I want to see what your take is on the newest member of the Buffalo Sabres and the last first overall draft choice in the NHL draft, this past NHL draft that took place last week. The Buffalo Sabres, first overall, they win the NHL draft lottery. And it wasn't really much of a shock, okay, that the Sabres selected Owen Power. Was I stunned by it? Not in the slightest, especially when 2 hours, 3 hours prior to the draft, we hear the news that Rasmus Ristolainen, longtime Buffalo Sabres defenseman, 8 years that Rasmus Ristolainen spent in Buffalo, was moved from the Buffalo Sabres to the Philadelphia Flyers for a top 15 pick. It's a very hectic, it's a very busy time this time of year for every club and then within the National Hockey League. And we have to say to ourselves, yes, stating the obvious, this Sabres team is not that great. The Sabres team is going through what is called a refresh, a rebuild, not a refresh, not a rebuild, a revamp, as what was said by Craig Rivet. People can kind of go about it their own way in believing that this is a rebuild. I've taken the approach that, okay, it is somewhat a rebuild, it is somewhat a revamp, but a refresh, I think, is the best way to say it. And while I welcome Owen Power to the Buffalo Sabres, big talking point within this video podcast is whether or not Owen Power will stay in Buffalo, will actually be in Buffalo his first quote-unquote rookie season, this upcoming season, 2021, 2022. That's a major question for any franchise to draft a player first overall. These players can elect to stay in college. Owen Power didn't necessarily have the college experience at Michigan that most American kids, or kids that, go to an American university, I should say, in this case being that hockey is such an international game. Most of these guys do not get the opportunity this past season. They didn't get the opportunity to really experience college for what it is, college hockey for what it is. And let's call a spade here. How much of a difference will Owen Power make towards the Buffalo Sabres in his quote-unquote rookie season. I can't tell you how much of a difference he would make. I know one thing. I'd rather have Owen Power out there as a fan of the Buffalo Sabres. I would want Owen Power out there his first season. A first overall draft choice is a highly talented player in almost every which case. Owen Power out there for the Buffalo Sabres is what is best for the Buffalo Sabres this upcoming season. But what is best for Owen Power, I truly believe, will be going back to school, going back to Michigan. I have a lot of doubts as to whether or not Power will come to Buffalo for this 2021-2022 season. But it adds another question, and it adds another talking point on my belief that thus far, given what Kevyn Adams has had to deal with as the general manager of the Buffalo Sabres, a ton of turmoil in terms of questions from the media as to whether or not Jack Eichel will be traded. Rasmus Ristolainen, is he going to be traded? Sam Reinhart, is he going to be traded? Kevyn Adams has already answered both of those questions with action, trading Rasmus Ristolainen, trading Sam Reinhart, and the question that looms over the franchise is whether or not Jack Eichel will be traded. It had to have been nice for Kevyn Adams to step up to the podium and just say, with the first overall selection in the 2021 NHL draft, the Buffalo Sabres select Owen Power. Now, where the Sabres really need to make their mark is not on these obvious Rasmus Dahlin or, Owen Power draft choices. Where the Sabres need to make their mark is in the, second round, third round, fourth round. You go back to some of these drafts by the Buffalo Sabres past general managers, whether it's Jason Botterill or Tim Murray, and you see their inability to select a highly productive, capable NHL player in those rounds. But this time around, I really like what Kevyn Adams has done. And I want to say that I'll go a little bit more in depth about that in another episode of the show. I have a guest coming on the show, and we're going to talk about the Buffalo Sabres draft and then some, a real deep dive into it. Today is a big day for the Sabres as well, of opening of free agency. No word yet on any free agents that the Sabres have, interest in or anything like that. And frankly, despite the circumstances of the Sabres not being the best team this past season, 18 straight losses last year, which is abysmal, I just don't see the Sabres being major free agent players. If there are players that are veterans, guys that want to come here for a cup of coffee to help us out when we're in the midst of this youth movement, another new youth movement of the Buffalo Sabres, I'm all for it. But despite the fact that Kevyn Adams has gone through all this, I would say it's a job well done by Kevyn Adams thus far. I'll go a little bit deeper into that in the next episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. But for now, I just want to simply welcome Owen Power to the Buffalo Sabres and say that I'm very, very excited based on the highlights and the clips and the tape that I have seen of Owen Power. He is a very physical 6'6", 215-pound defenseman that has been productive everywhere he's been. The highlights that I showed you at the beginning of the show were during his time with the Chicago Steel. I did not show you the highlights that he put together as a member of the University of Michigan Wolverines hockey club, due in large part to the fact that, one, the majority of people have already seen those highlights, and two, I wanted to show you guys the Chicago Steel highlights. It's that simple. I thought that those highlights kind of showed a different type of player that Owen Power is and can be in the National Hockey League. I'm very pumped up to see Owen Power lined up, possibly on the same line as Rasmus Dahlin. But with the good comes the bad. The good, Owen Power in the building. The bad, Jake McCabe out of the building, looking like he is signing with the it's looking like he's going to sign with the Chicago Blackhawks. So, I'm a little bit, trying to look on the bright side of being a Buffalo Sabres fan at this current point in my fanhood. We're not exactly elated for what's to come. We know that this team is not going to be the best team in the NHL anytime soon. They're going to be a team that is going to consistently, be a bottom 10 team until things really start to open up. But I want to start off the show by saying welcome to Buffalo, Owen Power, and the facts of the facts. I watched the tape. I see Owen Power as a guy that truly belongs in the National Hockey League as it stands. Do I believe that Owen Power could play in the National Hockey League this season at a high level? 100%, based on what I have seen. And when I read, scouting reports on Owen Power, it's very easy to understand his appeal in the terms of he's 6'6", he's strong, and for a defenseman to skate as well as Owen Power does with his size, it's truly rare. Russ Cohen, an elite prospect scout, was quoted as saying, "Power is always willing to make the harder pass instead of the easier pass. It's going to set up a better play. It's all instinctive to him." And a lot of others have said that as well. A lot of other scouts, a lot of other writers have said that Owen Power is just a smart, cerebral player, and there isn't really a ton of development needed in that aspect. So that is a positive for the Buffalo Sabres. Now, the Sabres own Owen Power's rights. Does that mean he's going to sign here? I think he seemed elated to come to Buffalo, and I do definitely see him signing here. It's just a matter of the question that I asked in the show. Will he play here in 2021, 2020 season? If he does, great. If he doesn't, I completely understand. It won't break the Sabres if he's on the team either way this upcoming season, because I don't see the Sabres as a team that will be much more competitive than they were last year, unfortunately. But nonetheless, welcome to Buffalo, Owen Power. I'm Ryan Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Welcome to Buffalo, Owen Power. Will he play with the Buffalo Sabres this season? I hope so. I'd love to see it. But if not, it's A-okay with me.